While the Twisted Wonderland we know and love isn't an otome game, there may be an alternate universe out there where it is. And in this hypothetical alternate universe, the game might not be focused on the students of NRC, but those wonderful adults we've gotten to meet through our various adventures. Yes, all those lovely event characters who have either stolen our hearts or ignited our rage, all up for romantic consideration. Today, I'll be providing my opinions on each of these eligible suitors to see who, in my opinion, is the most dateable. I'm not going to be rating anything concretely, but I will be providing my rationale for why I ranked folks where I did. And even though I don't have any rules for my ratings, I do have a few for this video. I'll only be ranking event characters who are out on the EN server and who are canonically single, so folks like Marja and Eliza aren't going to be featured. I'm also only ranking the adult characters, so no Najma. And on that note, while Rolo is technically an adult because he is 18, to me, he is very much a child and will not be ranked. And we'll be following the classic order of saving the worst for last. Since this video is going to be covering event characters, there will be event story spoilers, so this is your spoiler warning. Now then, starting off with our fifth eligible suitor, we have Gantu. Now, we don't get to see a lot of Gantu during the Tropical Turbulence story, and almost all of our interactions involve Gantu's current mission, which is to recover Stitch. We don't get much else out of him or find out much about him during that process. However, there are a few things we can infer by his behavior. First and foremost, Gantu is very dedicated, as we can see by his steadfast determination to recover Stitch by any means, at any cost. This could be good in a relationship, as Gantu could be very dedicated to his partner, but it could also be energy that he just funnels into his work, which means that you would be on the back burner for extended periods of time. This can also mean that whatever Gantu sets his mind to, including specific outcomes to your discussions, he's going to do, and if you try to convince him otherwise, you'll be talking to a brick wall. Now, this may be an over-exaggeration of his stubbornness on my part, and I don't think he'd be too unreasonable in the context of a romantic relationship. However, I would still be cautious about this personality because the stubborn determination isn't a quality that's exclusive to just the Twisted Wonderland Gantu. Anyways, one of the other things Gantu's got going for him is that he has a job, and while that job may not be stable income necessarily, as bounty hunting is a little loosey-goosey, it is still income. Also, since he's a government-backed bounty hunter, he's probably reliable, which is a good quality to have in a partner. Quality time is also going to be a little wishy-washy since bounty hunting isn't exactly a 9 to 5, so unless you're in a similar field or independent, you may have a bit of trouble when it comes to spending time with Gantu. And overall, I think that's probably the biggest issue with Gantu because even though he is mature and reliable and determined, these good qualities are almost entirely reserved for his job, at least from what we can see. Perhaps his maturity isn't exclusive, but I can see the other qualities being so, and we really don't get to see what Gantu is like off of the clock. There is no telling which qualities transfer over to his personal life and how well they transfer over. Gantu is also desperate enough to resort to kidnapping just to have some sort of leverage to get Stitch when he's running out of options, which I feel is a bit of a red flag because what extreme lengths will he go to in your relationship to get his way? Is he actually reasonable, or is he only reasonable if things are going his way? I don't really know, but I get some weird vibes from this guy, so he's gonna get placed near the bottom. He's not quite as bad as someone else, because we really don't know for certain who Gantu is, and perhaps those qualities do transfer over. Perhaps he would be a very loving partner, but we only get to meet him in that work context, and we are also against him in that event, so there's a lot up in the air that I just can't pin down. And I think that uncertainty is what put him farther down on this list. Coming in at number 4, we have the Fairy Queen, who we also don't really know anything about, despite her being an integral plot point of the Fairy Gala stories. She only gets to talk in one of them, and even then, it's not very much, so we don't have too much to go off of. But from what little we do get, I think I can make a case for her to rank a bit higher than Gantu, and it's mainly because of her rationality. When presented with new facts by Silver and the gang, she takes that information into consideration and adjusts her actions accordingly. This little moment speaks very well to her maturity and her grace. She is willing to admit some of her own faults in that situation without completely disregarding the faults of the boys, striking a balance that allows all parties to feel satisfied with her conclusion. In doing this, the queen is able to completely ease the tension and resolve the conflict without any violence, which is so tactful, but also likely a skill she's learned over time in her position as queen. When applied to a relationship situation, this awareness is crucial for communication, and I can see the queen taking your concerns seriously, provided you are also giving her grace in return. She doesn't seem like a pushover, and I doubt you'd be able to brute force your opinions or strong arm her into doing something she doesn't want to do. But I also think she's unlikely to try either of those things on you either, given what we've seen. As long as there is mutual respect between you, then I think you could be happy together, and since the queen is good at communicating, I think that this shouldn't be a problem. She also doesn't seem like much of a tyrant, and she's highly respected by her people, so she'll likely be judicious with you as well in a romantic setting. I don't know how quality time will go since we meet the queen under such unique circumstances, and she is the reigning monarch of a whole subsect of Fae, so I have no idea how busy she is or how much time she even has for a relationship. But even if that's a problem, I think the two of you would be able to make things work out well enough for love to bloom. The only true thing I see standing in your way, besides mutual interest, of course, is your humanity, because boy oh boy do her subjects not like the humans at all. I'm not sure if this is because of the gala specifically, or if these types of fae are just generically wary of humans to begin with, but I think getting a chance to actually talk to the queen, let alone court her, is going to be ridiculously difficult no matter what. Even if the fae are welcoming of humans, they may not be welcoming of a human monarch or even a human consort. But if you somehow managed it, I think that she would be a very good partner. But since we really don't have much else to go off of, and there are no other supplemental stories about her, I can't really rank her too high either, because she may have some deal-breaking skeletons in her closet that we're just not aware of. So for that reason, she's only ranking at number 4, but hey, it's kind of the middle of the road, and that's not the worst place to be, especially for such a mysterious figure. In third place, we have Neji, or Kafaji, depending on which version of the game you play, who is the hardworking Chamberlain of the Sunset Savannah. We get to meet this absolute cutie during the Cloud Calling on the Savannah event, and while my admiration for him is largely influenced by my childhood crush on Zazu, Neji does have his own good qualities, which scored him this spot in this list. First and foremost, this man is dedicated to his position and to the royal family, so it stands to reason that he'd be dedicated to his partner. You may run into the same issue as Gantu here, where Neji is a bit too dedicated to work at the detriment of your romantic dealings. But I think given his strict nature and adherence to the rules and traditions, this may not be a problem. Gantu was willing to do anything to accomplish his goals, but Neji is a bit more diplomatic in this regard and is willing to forego certain rules in order to uphold formalities. We can see this play out at the end of the Cloud Calling event, where he refuses to call out Leona for participating in the brawl, which is not allowed, in order to not bring shame to the royal family's name. So I think when it comes to this steadfast devotion, there is some wiggle room that you could move into that might make Neji a bit more reasonable overall, assuming of course he's in that sort of boat with Gantu. In his role as Chamberlain, Neji must keep things orderly and on track, so his personal life is likely also well kept in this regard. I doubt he has any trouble remembering anniversaries or important events, and as long as his work doesn't interfere, I think Neji would always be there for his partner or family. Speaking of family, I can't help but get the feeling that Neji would be good in that round too. He might be a bit strict given his rule-abiding nature and stance on traditions, so that could be a problem depending on your philosophy, but I also don't think that he would be neglectful in any way. We can kind of infer what he would be like with kids from his relationship with Leona and Cheka, as Neji's actions, although strict, stem from care for them no matter how much this care is unappreciated. I guess in his role as Chamberlain, he's more of an uncle of sorts to the boys who kind of guides and directs them, or I guess maybe a mentor would be a better descriptor for him. But I think that this could still be applied to a romantic family dynamic as well. Given Neji's current state and life experiences, I think he has a lot of knowledge to offer and would know many things and be able to get things done. He's got a lot of connections in the Sunset Savannah that you could network with, and he's got a very stable job that relies on his integrity, and I, for one, think that that's a huge green flag. The fact that he has kept his position for all these years must mean that he is trustworthy, or at least that's what you would hope, which means he's likely deal with his romantic partner in the same way. He may occasionally lie to save face, but on the whole, I believe him to be honest, and that's very, very good. However, he is not the best of the best out there because of his strict adherence to tradition and his dedication to his work. While no perfect person exists, I can see these two things becoming deal breakers for people, so they are what are keeping him held back here. But since we do get to see more of him in the event in which he's featured, and those interactions are with characters he has history with, we do get a lot more information about him than we did for the Fairy Queen and Gantu. And the information that we get is largely positive. I wouldn't fault anyone for wanting to date this particular bird, but he's only going to be number 3. Now then, coming in at second place is the fair and lovely Dila Spade, a dedicated, hardworking single mom who absolutely, unequivocally has it going on. With a work ethic that is second to none, Dila has been able to support herself and Deuce even during times where the two weren't on particularly good terms. Even though they still aren't at 100% now, the two do have respect for one another and are trying their best to get on the same page. But because she's a woman who knows what she wants and will do whatever she needs to get it, she's also a little stubborn. We can see her competitive side coming out during White Rabbit Fest when the delinquents start making trouble at the White Rabbit delivery booth, so we know where that side of Deuce comes from. In fact, Deuce is a wellspring of information regarding Dila as he talks about her on a few different occasions. At the beginning of Book 1, we find out he's so motivated to become an honor student so that he can make his mom proud and ease her worrying. During Book 5, Deuce even opens up to Epple about his past, including talk of his honor student goals, which also includes his mom. And in Deuce's Star-Sending Robes vignette, he opens up to Silver about his past too, noting that his mother always believed him when he claimed not to be responsible for certain acts of tomfoolery. All of this speaks to Deuce's respect for his mother, which Dila would not have earned had she been a bad mother. Sure, there were times where things were rough, as Deuce reflects in his New Year's attire vignette, but even those less favorable memories are still important to him, and looking back on them now, he can appreciate the sacrifices that were being made. Dila did everything within her power to make sure Deuce had a good childhood, even if some of those moments were less savory. Yes, they had to go to the sale and fight other savvy shoppers to pick up their necessities, but Dila balanced that with the candy, which made the whole affair a lot more fun. Her having Deuce's back during his delinquent days is also a huge indicator of her character, because I don't think that she was blindly believing Deuce. When we meet her in White Rabbit Fest, she comes off as being much more aware than that, and she even schemes to get Deuce and the boys dressed up for the event. So I'm sure that during those earlier days, Dila had those same sharp senses to be able to make better judgments. Meaning that overall, Dia has good discernment and isn't quick to jump to conclusions, which I think would translate to her romantic relationships too. I don't think she's going to let you get away with lying, but if you are truthful and in a tight spot, she's gonna have your back. That sort of support is a wonderful thing to have, and I would sure hope that it would be reciprocated by whomever her partner may or may not be. The only true downside I see to Dia is that she might be a little stubborn and unwilling to relent some burdens. She's been running at full speed for so long that it's probably hard for her to slow down, and she's been so independent for so long that it may be difficult to bring in new ideas or subtle changes. Since she's such a motivated go-getter, she also likely knows what she wants and how to get it. And I'm not sure you can talk her down from her ideas either once her mind is made up. But I don't think that these are red flags, not at all. And I think that Dila overall would be a very dedicated partner who isn't afraid to take the reins when needed. Of course, Dila is not the only one you have to win over if you're trying to start a relationship here. Deuce also has to approve of you, and I can see him being a bit protective of his mother, although I don't think that he would be unreasonable. I do think, though, that you must understand that Deuce will forever be Dila's number one. So if you are not okay with that, then you're automatically out. Even this is a green flag in my book because for these two to have that strong of a bond, despite their rocky past, is a fantastic indicator of both of their characters. All of this is to say that if you manage to have a shot with Dila, then you better be grateful because she is one amazing person, but it wasn't quite enough to get her to the top spot. Instead, taking our top spot, the most eligible suitor in this event pool is none other than Eric Venue, movie star, producer, and dad extraordinaire. This guy's practically got it all, and yet, even with all of his accolades, he seems like he's rather down to earth and relatable. Much like Vil, Eric is pleasantly graceful without a shred of entitlement, and I think that in part comes from Eric having to claw his way up through the industry. In Tapis Rouge, the event in which Eric is introduced, we find out from Vil that his father had to fight really hard to overturn public opinion. But his tenacity held out, and now Eric is one of the greats. Of course, during this process, Eric had to be a bit ruthless, as Vil later discusses, so he's not all gentle grace. But I have a hard time believing there is any malice in his alleged strictness. The environment that Eric and Vil are in requires a bit of discernment, and you do have to fight to get your way. You really can't rest in this type of business because your entire livelihood is based on public perception. And so if you were to step out of the spotlight for even a moment, someone else will fill in your place. So you have to fight to remain in that light, which makes his more driven side completely understandable. And because we get to see Eric interact with his son and his friends, I think we get a glimpse of the man behind the mask, so to speak. We're not on the clock, so there's no reason for Eric to keep up that sort of hardened persona, which means we get to see a much realer version of him, and what we do see is delightful. Eric is warm, inviting, and genuinely interested in the people that he's meeting. I get a genuine sense of care from him, specifically regarding Vil, as most of the conversation throughout dinner centers around their relationship. The moments that they spent together when Vil was young are cherished by them both. Eric is looking out for Vil by meeting his so-called friends, and Vil even gives his father a stern warning about bedtime, which is really cute, even though the genuine care is being masked behind concerns of appearances. Despite the limited time these two had together, their bond is strong, and that's a huge green flag in my book. Eric can maintain a good relationship with his son, respects Vil's wishes regarding his career, and remains supportive throughout it all. There's even a moment in Vil's overblot flashback that I think bolsters Eric's character and supports the calm gentleman we see on display in Tapis Rouge. In the flashback, we see a scene where Eric is consoling Vil after he received yet another villain role. This talk is very gentle and doesn't come across as placation. Instead, to me, it seems like a genuine teaching moment. Eric has the perspective required to understand why Vil was put in the position that he was because of Eric's experience spending years in the industry. So what he is telling Vil is accurate, but it is also phrased in a way that I think a child could understand. While this doesn't directly address Vil's root problem of wanting to stay on stage, it is an important moment for him, and I think it might be something that Vil returns to from time to time to comfort himself when meeting the disappointment of yet another villain role. That's just the feeling I get from it anyway, because this scene was important enough for Vil to recall in this flashback. And as we see with Riddle, not every flashback scene is a sad one, because Riddle also recalls the fun times he spent with Trey and Chenya. Even just this small glimpse of Eric from Vil's perspective gave me the impression that he was not only a well-rounded individual, but a stable one, which makes him very safe. But you may be asking, what does any of this have to do with a romantic relationship? Well, these bits of Eric that we see aren't necessarily exclusive to his relationship with Vil. The two of them are family, sure, and I have no doubt that Eric treasures Vil. But I think if you were to become like family, you would be treated in a very similar way. The warmth, the support, the care, all of it I think translates into a romantic relationship, even if it doesn't manifest in the exact same way that we've seen on screen. But given what we have seen, Eric appears to be a stable source of calm, which may not appeal to everyone, but to me, this puts him leagues and bounds above our other contenders. Sure, he has a harsher side. Sure, he isn't all fancy dinners and rainbows. But when it comes down to those quiet moments, the quality time spent together, I think it would be extremely easy to be at ease with him. Finding that sort of peace with someone else is something that should be treasured, I think. And it's made even better by the fact that I have a hard time seeing Eric as overly judgmental. He must be able to read people given his line of work, but we see him handle our group of glazers with an understanding and grace that is second to none. Eric's even completely fine with Grim and his toddler antics during the dinner too, which makes me think he's a bit like Lilia in that he's had enough life experience to accept differences and is understanding of different cultures. I doubt Eric is going to be put off by a difference of opinion, provided there is reason for it, and I think this could be an extremely important factor in disagreements or arguments or other forms of communication. However, how you approach communicating with him could be an issue, and even though he is understanding, seemingly, he may say things with subtext that could be hard to pick up on if you're not used to it. Honestly though, the only true drawback I'm seeing is the quality time, which has been a very big pattern in this video. Because those moments of quality time with Eric are going to be few and far between. Even now, moments where Vil and Eric get to meet are very sparse, and even our little dinner with him was only made possible by the extenuating circumstances. With this, I think it would be difficult for romance to bloom because I just don't think he has the time. If it could be managed, then y'all are set, but if there's not a shred of time to be spent between you, then I think it's going to be impossible. But that being said, he did set aside time specifically for Vil during our interaction, so perhaps if he was interested enough, he would also purposefully set aside time for you. However, the bigger issue though, besides this quality time, is that you absolutely, unequivocally, need Vil's approval for anything to move forward. Do I think Vil would stop his dad from dating? No. But do I think he'd be incredibly invested in ensuring the person that his dad is dating is worth it? Is that even a question? If Vil doesn't like you, nothing else will have mattered because you will not be getting anywhere. That much I can guarantee you. And with Rook by Vil's side, there's nothing you can hide. But if you manage to earn the respect of both Vil and Eric, then you'll have a safe and stable future. I will admit, I do have a pretty big bias towards the sense of stability that I get from Eric, so that definitely played a role in this consideration and in his ranking above Dila. Although, truthfully, I think the two of them are probably on the same level of eligibility. Dia may practically have a little bit more of an edge compared to Eric, but I personally like the calm of Eric over the strength of Dila, so I ultimately put Eric on top. That's just how the cookie has crumbled. But that does mean that it is time to finally discuss our least eligible suitor, and it brings me no pleasure, absolutely none, to announce that they are Mr. Honest Fellow himself, Ernesto. Now, if I was considering Ernesto in a vacuum, he likely would have taken the top spot, because there is a way that you can spin his character and have him be actually pretty positive. He's charismatic, his character design is great, his voice is amazing, he takes care of his nonverbal brother well, and on the whole, you can make an argument for Ernesto and Gino to have been forced into the situation that they're in for a variety of reasons. Perhaps they just had to take on this job to make ends meet. Maybe they were running away from something else and this opportunity happened to pop up. We don't know exactly why or how they got cast for their roles in Playful Land, but we do know that they have been down on their luck for a very long time. And when you are struggling, it is very easy to take whatever opportunity you can just to survive. I have a feeling that these two may have been in a very similar situation, or at least in a similar situation to the fox and cat character in Pinocchio, who were basically forced into doing the same job as Ernesto and Gino are currently doing. However, we have no concrete evidence to support this theory, because the only thing that Ernesto really talks about being his motivation, besides his traumatic childhood memories surrounding school, is money. And that is a terrible motivation for the kind of work that Ernesto is doing. To be fair, I don't think there's any good reasoning for anyone to be doing the kind of work that he is doing. Because I should like to remind you that Ernesto and Gino, by extension, are traffic of the king's people to this island and away from their homes. The way they get around this is by those people turning into puppets, and while Ernesto and Gino are not the ones actually casting that spell, they are the ones facilitating the bringing of people to the place where that happens. And they are specifically on the lookout for marks that are high value, like the boys from NRC. Ernesto, in particular, because he is the adult in the situation and because Gino presumably is his dependent, is the one holding the full brunt of this responsibility. Not only is this the case because he is the adult, he is also, according to the wiki, 26 years old, which means that his prefrontal cortex is completely and fully developed. At what time he took this job, I'm not entirely sure, but if it was within the past year, he should have had enough sense to know that what he is doing is so very wrong. There is no way for him to come back from this action, particularly because at the end of Playful Land, he doesn't seem truly remorseful. The entire conclusion of this event and the resolution that comes from the story is nonsensical to a degree that really frustrates me. And I think that if he was given a little more depth in the event, or he was just a tiny bit more honest, then maybe there could be some sort of breadcrumb or some sort of conclusion that could lead us down a path where he becomes a little bit more sympathetic. But there are people out there who are struggling that do morally dubious things. Ruggy, for example, that also don't do exactly what Ernesto is doing. Sure, Ruggy has his own faults and sort of tried to kill Malleus, which is, a thing that happened. But Ruggy is also a child, so there's a little bit more leeway that can happen with him. Ernesto is not a child. In fact, Ernesto is caring for a child. And Ernesto, of all people, being someone who cares for a child, should not be in a situation where he is traffic of the king's children. There is nothing that can redeem him from this quality. It doesn't matter how cute he is. It doesn't matter how charismatic he is. It doesn't matter anything else. Even how well he takes care of Gino. He is doing something that is so morally corrupt, so disgusting, that I don't foresee a world where you can say that this guy is a total sweetheart, you should date him, and you'll live happily forever after. I don't understand how anyone can think that way. And this is coming from a person that really likes this character. It's just too high of a wall for you to surmount. It's too much of a barrier to be crossed. Ernesto went off of the deep end, and now he has to pay for those consequences in whatever shape they take. But if for some reason you still want to fix him, let me also give you a hypothetical scenario that I can see being very likely given the events at the end of Playful Land. Ernesto and Gino leave the sinking ship, a sinking ship that their proprietor might just assume they went down with. However, this proprietor is described as having tendrils in every form of government, in every place, all over this world. Do you really think such a person that has that much influence would not be able to spot the fox and his compatriot at any point in time in their new lives? Do you think that he would be gracious enough to let them go, knowing what they know, even though if they told people, they probably would not be believed? Do you really think that this person who set up this entire place to enslave people as puppets is going to let the person that he had facilitating that facility go? And you think you, being in a relationship with that person, is going to be spared from that ire? No, you are not. He is a walking liability. Well, this is entirely speculation on my part. I just cannot foresee circumstances where this doesn't become a thing, especially because of their purported influence. If that proprietor doesn't go down himself, then they are going to constantly be in danger of retribution. And if you get close to these two, you are also going to be in that danger. And none of that has anything to do with the fact that Ernesto is not honest, which is a huge red flag. If nothing else I have talked about has yet to deter you from this man, please let his dishonesty be that tipping point for you. This man lies through his teeth. He lies through his teeth so much that Ortho couldn't even figure out that he was lying with his biometric reading equipment technology stuff. Even to the very end of the Playful Land story, the dude is lying through his teeth, and he keeps making up stories and scenarios and trying to just wiggle his way out of everything. Do you really want to be in a relationship with someone who is going to try to wiggle their way out of every single disagreement, every single conversation, is going to gaslight you most likely, and to top it all off, is probably also going to leave in the middle of the night if things get too difficult? Communication is the foundation for every single kind of relationship, not just romantic ones, and Ernesto is not going to be very good at communication. Gino is probably the only person that can actually know what is going on in Ernesto's mind at any given time, and it will take an incredibly long time for you or any potential partner, I think, to build enough trust up with Ernesto for him to be honest with you. It is going to be a long process. It is going to take a very long time, and I think that Ernesto is the type of person that is going to take a while to feel safe with someone else. So, if you were in a relationship with him and he did not get to that point, he was likely to flee, I think, given what we see at the end of Playful Land. And that's not good either. Ernesto just is such a liability, and I cannot imagine a scenario where he does not wreck your life. And while I do enjoy his character and he has a lot of other attractive qualities, the lying, the potential to be removed from this mortal plane by proxy, and just the fact alone that he was okay with, to our knowledge, traffic of the king's children and other individuals is just, I don't know what else I could tell you to deter you away from this fox. Do not fall for his charms and his lies. He will hurt you. You cannot fix him, which makes him the least eligible suitor of all. And with that, we have our list of eligible, dateable event NPCs ranked by me. Who do you think are the most and least eligible suitors given these limitations? Would you rank someone higher? Would you rank someone lower? Let me know down below, and while you're there, please do let me know if you liked the video and want more content like it. If comments aren't your thing, then you could also show your support with a like or maybe even a subscribe. And before you go, I do have to remind you that you're amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful day.